And then the actress said to the,
Oh yes, I'd never seen one like it myself.
no, that's what she said.
And as long as you keep rubbing on the ointment, that's what he
Yes.
said, or the doctor said. Well, here we are then, and guess what? The elections have happened, and storms have happened, and electricity. She is gone. She is very gone from here. Gone for 35 hours now. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, at midnight it'll be 36. So fun, and another fun side note and fun side story on that for geeks that are here. When the little town where the school that I teach at was bought online, last night, and then they fiddled with it.
Did it get bought online from eBay? Did you buy it online
exactly.
from eBay?
Yeah. Like, exactly. When they bought the power back up, they bought it mostly up last night, and then they turned more on this morning, but they turned a lot more than they really should have done. And it almost instantaneously blew 31 switches of our at the school, most of the houses, all the TVs, it was crackerjack. So we all that electricity that we'd missed for a few hours, they sent it all down the wire at once, which I suppose we paid for it. So it was very, very good of them. Very, very good of them. Yes, so that's me. That's my sad story of woe. We are expecting a guest. I wonder if our guest has not got the right right clock, but we shall see. Now, I was hoping the other Ian would be along because the shit. Oh, hello!
Someone's coming. No, it's
Blake.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Wrong link.
Oh, yeah.
Blake
Wrong
himself.
StreamYard link, no less.
Yeah.
No.
Can you hear me okay?
A bit of an extra, mate.
Headphones? All right, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Oh, you're good.
He's a young internet guy. They're going to be in his pocket, aren't they?
Switch to the neural link.
Yeah. What am I doing up here? I don't know. Is it me that's accurate?
No,
Light came on.
We're all echoing. Echoing.
Echo. Yeah, it's not me.
What? Mute Blake for a moment and see what happens. Oh, no, it's gone now.
Yeah, it muted me.
Oh, it's you. You're trouble.
Yeah, I like to think so.
Maybe
it's better. Okay, cool. Yeah, so Blake today. Welcome indeed. Have you got a show and tell? Have you got your exciting new project to show and tell us?
Not within arm's reach, but I can grab one. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, please. Yeah, that'd be very helpful.
Let's do that. Okay, I'll be right back.
Cool, man. All right, cool.
Well, that's the quickest guest we've ever had. Usually they stay to halftime.
Yeah, half time. Where did he find half time? When does
You've probably gone to the toilet as well. So.
Oh, look out! Kevin's in the comments. Oh, now he's in trouble. Young Blake, let's get his resume up, as they say. He's from Brink. Oh, well, now it's gone very quiet.
Yeah, he just muted. I don't know if it was himself he muted, or it was Bruce who muted him, or what.
Well, be good if he muted Bruce, wouldn't it? God, sounds like I've been drinking all night, but I haven't.
He muted Bruce.
I'm freezing cold. It's
hot now. I'm had to strip off because it's getting hot here.
It's hot here in Finland. We've had unbelievable weather. It's like plus 22 at 10 o'clock at midnight. You know, it's sweaty
always,
here.
Always plus 22 in the hot tub at midnight, eh?
Oh.
Right. Well, I hope he's not bringing a big box. He's bringing
he's going to bring a big box and put it in front. Yeah,
the whole thing.
You still wouldn't hide his hair.
No. Looks like an explosion in a bed spring factory, doesn't it?
Yeah, but sometimes you need a brand, don't you? He's walking around with his earbuds on and he can hear us. He can hear us.
He can't hear us.
Yeah,
No, we can talk about him for
There we
100
go.
He'll never hear anything.
All right, we better stop talking about him now,
Yeah,
even
okay.
though we've heard of him. G'day, mate. Yeah, thank you very, very much for joining us. You had quite an exciting product launch last week. It does sound like I've been drinking, and I haven't. Launched last week. A drone in a box situation for drones as first responders. I had all sorts of things I wanted to ask you, but what you probably won't realize is that I'm bringing to this broadcast is proudly brought to you by the invention of candles at my end. We've had 35 hours of no power here in South Africa, and so it all goes to pot when that happens. It's gone.
Can I just jump in a second, just to be a nuisance, and say, Blake, you should have told us you're making all our haircuts feel inferior.
Here, what's that?
Yeah, exactly. No, the main thing is he's got hair. That's what's making you feel inferior.
Blake, you're on mute. Blake, you're on mute. We can't hear you at all.
Okay, great.
Oh, there you go.
Very nearly matching.
Feel at home, mate.
About the same size too. Look at that.
Yeah, that's what she said.
And then look, I've managed to put Kevin's comment in the side because Kevin's also having a crack at sporting a similar sort of hairstyle. And so I'm sure you know who Kevin is. Like he is the stalwart defender of the cause when it comes to DJI and potential security stuff. And so no claims made against your machine yet. So that's interesting. That's interesting. So do you want to tell? I've been waffling on. Do you want to tell us about your machine and what does this drone as first responder mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love to. So we've basically just released the first ever purpose-built 911 response drone, which is this. It's called Responder. Couple high-level capabilities, 42 minutes of flight time, which is sort of an industry-leading spec for a drone of this size. Up front, we have a 640 thermal imager, 2 camera modules with an optical zoom function. So we're capable of 40x total zoom, 20x optical. Up front, we also have a stereo camera pair for forward-facing obstacle avoidance. One of these things, this right here, is a forward-facing white light for the stereo pair. Across from that is a microphone. And then on kind of the bottom of the drone is a speaker. So this thing is capable of two-way audio. It also has a siren function and actually red and blue lights. You can see some LED modules on sort of the four corners of the aircraft, which can display like a white strobe for FAA compliance or be turned on into that sort of like red and blue emergency responder mode. Up top, these two things are cellular antennas. So we have a 4G LTE modem integrated into this drone. And these two things are mesh networking radio antennas. So you can actually fly this exclusively over 4G LTE, or you can run a mesh networking radio system. These drones will effectively repeat each other's signals. You can install separate pieces of radio infrastructure and networks around cities and then hook that up into Ethernet to ensure that you always have good coverage no matter where you're flying, and kind of build out some infrastructure in that way. In the back, we have GPS RTK antennas, which is basically the situation there. Also on the bottom of the drone, this is LiDAR for altitude estimation. And then these two things are little gold charging pads. So this drone can connect up electrically to a station and get autonomously recharged. And this is basically just one part of our system that we've designed to deploy, drones to 911 calls. The other two components are our robotic charging nests that we want to install on top of police and fire station roofs. And then Live Ops, which is our web app where, officers can fly these things around and control like citywide deployments of 911 response drones. So yeah, it's kind of what this is all about.
That's very cool. I have one question since you released this, or since the press release came out. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. One question I have is, okay, so you got 45 minutes flying time. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Roughly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that means that the drone would fly, 20 odd minutes to one direction, and then obviously, get back. Would it have the ability to land in another nest? So let's just say that it would leave its nest, but there would be another nest that would be, let's say, closer by. Would it have the ability to land in that nest and give the optimal time that it would be in the air?
Yes, it can absolutely do that. So the regulatory limit in general is 2 miles from launch locations. So you can imagine like a station somewhere in a city, 2-mile radius circle around that station. And these drones can fly at about 50 miles an hour. So it doesn't take very long to reach an emergency anywhere within that 2-mile radius. Then you can stay there for perhaps 30 minutes. And afterwards, you can either land at the original takeoff location or, as you were describing, some other nest.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
And does that nest autonomously know, oh, there's someone coming? Does it chuck whoever's might be sat on the nest off? Or is there a spare one? How's it work? Have you got one live one spare one? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Ensuring that this whole network is schedulable is actually an extremely interesting engineering problem. So there are some algorithms working in the background to ensure that there's always a nest available within range of a drone that might be somewhere midair, and it's monitoring the battery state of charge of all of the agents in the system and everything else. So in general, we are deploying one drone per nest. But there is some fancy software running in the background to ensure that doesn't become a problem.
It all seems kind of dystopian, doesn't it?
I think that's totally a fair question. I don't think AEDs and Narcan and EpiPens being available to anyone in a city in less than 90 seconds is dystopian at all. I don't think firefighters having a live thermal imaging view of a structure fire before they arrive is dystopian at all. However, it is just a very powerful technology. This is a way for public safety agencies to get a camera anywhere they want in a city in less than 2 minutes. And it's going to matter how this is all deployed.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm only thinking about, you said that it was going to have siren on it or something, so thinking, just thinking, I'm visualizing, something out of Minority Report or something, when you see these things kind of flying around and stuff, and it's, it's that, it's of course this is the future, and technology, and things change in such a way, obviously for the better, so, and but I can see this being some kind of, how the future will be when it comes to first responders, or actually, or actually first response,
When I was watching a video on YouTube, I watched a YouTube video the other day, police SWAT team attending and trying to arrest a suspect who could be armed, and you could hear, sounded very much like a DJI Avata in the background, buzzing. Obviously, it's already part of the tactical response is to have some kind of drone when you're trying to reconnoiter a situation which may be dangerous. So, and I guess this is the same sort of thing, but this would be more from a more standoff point than sort of up close and personal, because with exposed props and things and vulnerabilities to T-shirts and toilet rolls, you've obviously got to stand off further.
The old counter toilet rolls. We need to do those.
Yeah, I'll tell you. What really gets the interior drones, we've seen this a lot. Number one, plastic grocery bags. They just get blown up and then adjusted right into the props. You got to be really careful about those. And then, those chains that hang from ceiling fans? Those get us all the time. From the headboard of the bed, right? Yeah.
Oh, Ian's trying to get in, and I don't know how to scroll down on this laptop I bothered to get to.
Shall I let him in?
Yeah, you can let him in. Yeah, you let him in.
There
he is.
Sorry, I'm late.
I need to ask you about BLLE in a minute.
Sorry.
No, hang on. I'll make a note. I'm just making a note over here. Okay. Right, I've made a note.
How much is this drone, Blake? You're not allowed to tell us.
Well, the thing is, we sell it primarily as a subscription, right? Which is actually how agencies want to adopt this. Very, very much so. So the way that agencies adopt body cameras or many other pieces of technology It's generally on a 5-year agreement, where as manufacturers come out with next generation pieces of hardware, they automatically get upgraded. So this is responder 1, but in the future we'll come out with responder 2 and 3. So at the 2.5 and then 5-year anniversary of the contract being signed, they automatically get the new tech. Then if one of these drones ever does stuck a plastic bag into its prop and, fall from altitude or whatever else, we'll replace these systems an unlimited number of times. These drones are designed to be flown constantly. So obviously lithium-ion batteries may be only good to, 300, 400, 500 charge cycles, depending on how careful you are with them. Motors are only good to a certain number of flight hours. We'll replace all those wear components as they reach the end of their lives. And then there's this big software component that's associated with data storage and integrations and all sorts of other things. So we kind of give these agencies everything. And then, getting even more detailed, if agencies are interested in pursuing something like a BVLOS waiver without a VO, we will install ground-based radar, ADS-B receivers, and then also help them go through the regulatory application process for one of those more advanced, FAA approvals. So that's kind of how we structure this whole thing.
Can we be very, very clear? Your cloud-based services are not in China, are they?
Not in China. No. Yeah.
Okay.
All stateside, it's AWS. Pretty standard stuff.
So you've got
Gary, you go. Gary, you go.
Okay, I'll just go. So we've got for first responders. So that is fire, ambulance, and police. Does a fire station have its one? Does the police have its one? Does an ambulance have its one? Because I guess the fit and finish will be slightly different. But should a big incident happen, can they be commanded as a unit from a central control station? Otherwise, you've got 3 or 4 services pitching or 10 services pitching up. Can it all be overseen in? I'm not putting this very well with your mesh network, and I assume that the mesh network speaks between the fire, ambulance, and police ones all communicate together. It's not an independent.
Yeah, so they have to share encryption keys. They have to share. So that's a really good question. They have to share encryption keys. So what's kind of interesting about this is police stations aren't in general in the right locations. This depends on the community, right? Sometimes they are, but in many cases, police stations aren't in the right locations to get full jurisdiction-wide coverage. However, fire stations are. And the reason why is fire engines don't go on patrol, right? They always deploy from buildings, from stations. So there are pre-existing regulations that require fire stations to be within proximity of population centers. And that makes them excellent candidates for deploying these drone nests. We find in most cities, if you just put 1 drone nest per fire station, you get full jurisdiction-wide coverage, which is pretty cool. Definitely not the case on the police side, because again, police cars go on patrol. So you might just have like a centralized police station, then send all of your vehicles out to get coverage and, have short response times. But on fire, you do just need more of those buildings. So I think the future of this whole space is these things become a shared emergency response asset, and they're used for all 911 response. If there's a fire call, one of these things deploys. If there's a police call, one of these things deploys. EMS, one of these things deploys. And in general, they're mounted on fire stations. But this will depend on like a community to community basis.
Sorry, Sue, I'll let you go. I'll let you go. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I know what's going to happen 2 days before retirement of one of the drones is that it'll fall out the sky or something, typical lethal weapon type of thing. When it comes, you were talking about the BB loss there, and you would help with that. My question is, is the FAA giving you a BV loss waiver, a Part 107 waiver for the BV loss flights, or are you getting a separate kind of let's say permission from the FAA, or are you allowed to talk about that?
No, 100%. So many of our customers are operating with like Part 107 licenses. However, a good chunk also have agency-wide COAs, like certificates of authorization, in which case pilots might not specifically also have a 107 license. The approvals that they're getting, it is through a waiver process right now. BVLOS approvals, though, are getting approved relatively quickly now, definitely faster than has ever occurred before in like the history of US BVLOS operations. I think the FAA is viewing this use case of drones responding to 911 calls, responding to life-threatening emergencies a little bit differently than they have viewed, drones taking off and delivering $5 USB cables, which is awesome in my view, and I think will be a benefit to the public. The complex waiver to get right now is BVLOS without a visual observer. So many of the BVLOS waivers that have been approved in the States, they require a human being to be on a rooftop monitoring the airspace where these drones are operating. And that is a big challenge because it is incredibly expensive to staff. And agencies are adopting DFR, they're adopting 911 response drones in large part because they're not able to hire police officers, right? They're understaffed. They have more budget, more allocated headcount than, they are able to hire or retain. And a big promise of DFR is that this is a technology that can clear out, a quarter of 911 calls, especially the low priority calls, like an obstruction in a roadway or a suspicious person that isn't actually suspicious or isn't there at all. That's why a lot of agencies want this. So if a significant component of the reason why agencies are finding this to be a beneficial technology is that it can lower staffing requirements. And at the same time, you have to staff it heavily with people on top of the roofs of every single launch location in your jurisdiction. Those are sort of competing requirements. The future of this whole space is basically this being done in an automated way. Yeah, please.
So what is the problem? So if you have to have VOs, let's say on rooftops and whatnot, I mean, you really explained it well by saying that you have the radio antennas, which can be placed, let's say, throughout towns and stuff, because you have those antennas on the drone itself, which of course would give you the radio frequency, which would give you the range, which I'm sure from an FAA perspective, by looking at the documentation, should really give you the ability. Is the problem for them really visual line of sight, or is it just flying over people?
So the thing that the FAA is really worried about is drones crashing into manned aircraft. That is the problem. That's really what they're thinking about and want to mitigate against. So one solution to this is ADSB, right? Having ADSB receivers wherever you're operating these drones, and that's useful because if aircraft are compliant, then you'll get their locations. They're broadcasting their position, but there's still. Exactly. So there is this issue of non-compliant aircraft. And that's really the tricky part because it requires you to either have a ground-based radar solution or to have a ground-based camera solution running some software in order to detect manned aircraft. So there has been one BVLOS without a VO waiver approved in the United States for DFR operations. That happened in Pearland, Texas, using the Iris Cassia G system, which is a camera-based solution, but it has very limited range and it can't operate at night. So it's not really a particularly scalable solution in our view. And that is why we've reached out to Echodyne, who is sort of the leading small ground-based radar manufacturer. We've partnered with them, and we have recently sent in a waiver to the FAA for BVLOS without a VO, utilizing Brink drones, Nests, all of the RF stuff that we talked about, plus ADSB and ground-based radars. And we're quite optimistic about it being approved.
Okay.
You need to get hold of our friend Richard from Altitude Angel, because that's, of course, is exactly what they're doing, and theirs works at night as well. No, it's a. I know what I was going to ask. So we've got all these little sensors ducking about, gathering data, doing their thing. Surely another piece of this puzzle is some sort of loitering platform overhead, giving your continuous mesh. And then sort of a broader, oh, look, there's a fire overview, right? Because it's detected it and it stays orbiting. and off go the little ones. Surely that must be in the plan.
Yeah, we're thinking about that. We are thinking about that.
Top answer. It's kind of got to be, hasn't it? Now, this mesh network, is that a 5G network, or is that a different frequency for the aircraft mesh?
Right. So we have 4G LTE on board the birds. We also have this mesh networking system. Mesh networking, though, is just working on like ISM bands. So, 2.4, 5.8, the sort of stuff that you would expect.
Okay. And all of the so the 4G, 5G, 4G stuff, that's for sending the like video telemetry and stuff like that back to your ground controls. You don't have a ground control station. You have a whole setup, don't you? I think. I can't remember what you called it. Sorry, you're gonna have to remind me.
Oh no, you're good. Yeah, I mean, listen, when we go and we enter into a contract with the city, we're really deploying a lot of infrastructure, right? We're deploying like all these stations to recharge drones and then deploy the things. We're installing, specific radio transceivers both at launch locations in order to give you coverage around where the drones are taking off, but also potentially in other locations around the city to ensure that they always have good connectivity through our mesh networking system. We might be installing these separate like ADS-B receivers and ground-based radars. Different cities require different radar configurations too, different units, different numbers of units in different places, because if you don't have line of sight on one of these things, like obviously you're not going to be able to see any manned aircraft that could be operating outside of that line of sight. So, it's pretty involved, but it's all designed to ensure that first responders can reliably operate these drones over their cities. And that's sort of what's required if you want to send drones out to respond to tens, hundreds of thousands of 911 calls.
Are you not? Questions. Oh, go ahead, mate.
Oh, yeah. Now, you say that one of the things the FAA put down for BV loss stuff was this see or detect and avoid capability. That was a prerequisite for BV loss flying.
Yes.
So you're getting around. Obviously, Wing and Amazon have managed to get around that with their increasing trials all over the USA. How are you getting around that?
Through the ground-based radar solution.
Ground-based. That's considered adequate, is it? Okay.
We'll see.
The other thing is,
we'll see. I mean, we'll see. We'll see if I think it should be. I think it absolutely should be. And we'll see what the FAA comes back to us with. But it is definitely a more capable solution than Iris Cassia G, which has already been approved in the United States.
What about high urban
so if that's the standard, this exceeds that standard.
How do you get on with tall buildings and urban canyons and things like that with radar gives you no coverage because you've got so many obstructions to the line of sight?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. So we do have this front-facing stereo camera pair. So the drone has obstacle avoidance capabilities that are built right in. Then we have the radar system, we have ADS-B, and geofencing capabilities. So an agency would go, or we would even do this for them, we would geofence those sorts of areas where we don't think, flight operations are safe. Or set certain like altitude minimums, for example, to ensure that we always have good, networking connectivity or whatever else.
Just one,
go ahead.
One quick one. Are you mapping the area that, let's say, the 2 kilometer area from, let's say, the fire department or the police? Do you have that in the drone that it knows the area? So obviously you can use Google or whatever it is, but they're not up to date. But are you using an up to date, let's say, mapping of the area?
That is an awesome question. Right now, it's quite manual. In the future, I think we will do that.
Okay. Which brings us to...
That's interesting. That speaks to Zipline's success, really, because they spent a lot of time on the nitty gritty of the thing. A lot of people spend a lot of time on the airframe itself without thinking of the day-to-day operation. And they'll just put in that Zipline spent a lot of time mapping out their routes and really nailed it and knew what they were doing. And I think that's where you have to expend an awful lot of time. And I know, and we'll keep talking, but I know that as a company, I think didn't you make quite an interesting distinction about something that your company won't do at your recent press launch, particularly the use cases that you won't allow your platforms as a company. You feel you won't let that happen. I'm trying to lead you. See if you can guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
There you go.
No doubt. Well, listen, I mean, I think these drones just have incredible potential to keep people safe and save lives around the United States and the rest of the world. And I think that people are already fairly nervous about police drones flying overhead, public safety drones, existing at all. And I think the prospect of having weaponized police drones deployed in big networks and cities is just completely unpalatable to folks in the United States and in most places on our planet.
Oh no.
So I think it's important that concern isn't a barrier to the deployment of these sorts of systems. And that's a big part of the reason why we made the commitment to not weaponize our drones.
Now, the other thing is your business model, like Xerox, requires a lot more capital than the manufacture and sell model. You've got all the capital in place to be able to manufacture these drones, and then you've got that much longer return period because it's on a lease basis and you're getting a monthly rather than a big cash return that covers all your costs. So all that infrastructure is in place. You're all happy with your funding?
Yeah, no, we are. So we've raised $82 million so far across 3 rounds. So it was a $2.2 million seed. Sam Altman was actually our first ever investor. Really cool person. I like him a lot. And then it was a $25 million A and a $55 million B. So I think we're in a reasonably good position along those lines. But the other thing that's nice about the public safety market is, our customers are incredibly blue chip. They're city governments. When one of these contracts are signed, they're really, really sticky, really stable. And there are also cases where these agencies will actually pay more than just the year 1 payment upfront, because they might have like a pool of grant money, for example, that they have to deploy by a certain date or they lose access to it. Or they might have some additional funds that, are left in their budget that similarly they have to deploy, or they won't get the same, allocation the following year. And we can kind of move around the payments of this, 5-year structure to accommodate the needs of our customers. And in some cases, that might be a large initial payment and then nothing for years like 2 through 5. In other cases, it might be a really small initial payment in year 1 in order to get them started with the program, and then it ramps up in the outer years. And we have the flexibility to have those conversations.
And the final question, the one that must be asked, are you full of glee that DJI may be banned?
Well, I mean, listen, DJI was my last job. I massively respect DJI. I mean, their technology is just remarkable, truly remarkable. And I feel similarly about their factories and manufacturing processes and everything else they've been able to accomplish. And they really invented our entire industry, starting with the flight controllers and everything else. So, I think in some ways we all owe them for their extensive contributions to the whole industry and really trailblazing it. But at the same time, I think that...
Are you sure you want to keep that claim about even the flight controllers in?
Sure. Well, listen, I remember the KK2 days and everything else. Yeah. That was fun, but let's be real. The original
went to DJI. OpenPilot was their first show.
No, you're totally right. However, we start talking about what were the first, real consumer drones. It was Phantom and Mavic, right? I mean, they invented the space. Mavic in particular, what an incredible product the original Mavic was. I mean, just unbelievable.
I always said I think, sorry, I jumped all over you. I always think their genius was putting it in that white plastic case that your wife or girlfriend would allow in the house. Before that streamlined case, yeah. I think that was the absolute genius. And yeah, the Mavic was nice, but that made them safe to come indoors. And before that, they weren't. So yeah, no, of course, no doubt they are, they have done incredibly well. But I wonder how. I was also going to speak to that a little bit. And I wonder how police departments that and fire departments that have gone all in with DJI, how does it look to them converting to you? Have you made sure you bring a lot of extra secret or special sauce along to the party to help convince them? And then how do you fare price-wise compared to what they currently do?
Yeah, I mean, those are all completely fair questions. So, I mean, the U.S. federal government has now banned itself from buying, DJI drones. 7 states have followed suit, starting with Florida. So, the conversations in those states are somewhat different from the conversations in the rest of the country. But, a big part of how we've operated from the very beginning is really focusing on a narrow, specific customer, and then building the best drone to ever exist for that customer, starting with the lemur and now moving on to responder. We built the first drone in the world that had a glass breaker or two-way audio system, or that has a LiDAR that as the drone is flying around, it's actually drawing a 2D floor plan of the structure. Like, even things, these are, a little bit less novel, but, creating a drone with turtle mode, ability to flip itself over, take back off, continue a mission, or to push open an interior door, or to integrate with certain pieces of software that they already use. Like, all of these things matter to SWAT teams who are our first customer. And when you compare something like Lemur 2 versus an Avata, Lemur 2 can just execute on many more missions than an Avata can. Lemur 2 can bust out the window so you don't have to risk someone's life with a shield, to rake the thing out when the person inside, potentially feet away, might have a rifle. With Lemur 2, that you just don't have to do that. Or when you do find someone, being able to put on a crisis negotiator, use the drone as a flying cell phone, and then talk them out of the structure. That's something that Avata can't do. Or the integration of a thermal imager on Lemur 2 for searching attic spaces, for example. Like, that is an incredibly useful capability. So it's just a better product. And our customers, public safety agencies, they're used to adopting specialized equipment. That's what they want. I mean, SWAT stands for special weapons and tactics. Like, the point of the unit is they use the best tools in the world to deal with the most extreme situations. And Lemur 2 is the best tool in the world for this mission. So if you can just be that specific and you don't have to deal with the constraints of building a consumer business, I think you can build tools that suit the needs of your customers better than anyone else can. And now with Responder, we can say, yeah, please.
Yeah, just to skip, because obviously I suspect your SWAT teams in the US probably have bigger budgets than policing teams in other countries. So when you're talking about this drone, you're saying it can break the windows and go in and so on, that's better than the Avata. What price point is that at? For me to get an idea of whether a UK police force is going to have that as as one of the things they might buy.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's definitely more expensive, but it's also just a lot more capable.
How much more expensive? Are we talking 10,000?
Well, like
20, 30, 40? Where are we at?
There are different ways to configure all of this, right? But starting at, I think the entry level price is like 15,000 for Lemur 2 at this point.
Okay. I
will say though, just a component like our mesh networking radio, and by the way, we need 2 of those per ship kit, right? 1 in our handheld controller, 1 in the aircraft. Just that single PCB is more expensive than an Avata.
Yeah,
because again, we have to be NDA compliant, right?
Yeah.
Or you know how much thermal imagers cost. Lemur 2 has a thermal imager. Avata doesn't. That changes our bill of materials quite a lot too.
Yeah, but you're obviously the Lemur and obviously your new product. They're not off the shelf drones. They're not let's say your typical. I mean a lot of the police force, even where I am right now here in Finland, a lot of the police can use off the shelf drones, and it's the off the shelf drones can be used, for very, very basic purposes. Your drones are being used specifically for specific purposes that the off-the-shelf drones cannot do. So they do have a use, so what you are actually providing is more value for the emergency services, for the SWAT team, for all the rest of it, that the others can't get from those off-the-shelf drones.
Yeah. I think that's totally a fair summary. I mean, great. You have an Avata, you fly it into a structure, you find someone. Maybe there's a closed door that you can't push open. Maybe you had to send someone up to rake out the window. You find someone. The drone can't talk to him. You might not have been able to establish two-way comms with that person, before initially making contact with the drone. It's great that you now know the person is inside, if they're injured or not, where exactly they are, but there isn't really a clear next step that you can take to try to make sure that everyone gets home safely, right? To avoid the situation where you have to send the SWAT team into the structure, which is extremely dangerous for everyone. Very dangerous for the suspect, very dangerous for the team. So just a capability like that can absolutely save someone's life.
Yeah.
And Lemur 2 can execute on that mission where Avata can't.
I want to pin down for a minute because the SWAT team thing is very, very American. So I want to go out of the American mindset for a moment.
Sure.
Because we don't have the same gun issues and hostage things and all that. So when you have those kind of situations here, they will be terrorist level situations. They wouldn't be day-to-day policing issues. So I want to pin you down a bit more. So if you had one that forget the mesh network, you're not going to need that just to go into a building. So, but what is a fully blinged out one that you're going to have where you can fly it into a building, where you get through the windows, where it's got the thermal? What price point are you at when you say, give me that? Give me with all the sauce.
Well, so the thing is, we primarily sell Lemur 2 as a part of a subscription too, which is something that our customers really want because they risk this drone all of the time. And we will replace Lemur 2s an unlimited number of times throughout that subscription duration. So one of the things that frustrated me early on, not frustrated me, but gave me some pause, is I noticed that teams wouldn't deploy a Lemur into a situation because they were worried about destroying it. It's I built this thing to be destroyed. The point of this is for the drone to get shot so everyone else can be safe. It is designed to be put into these dangerous situations. So it was important for me personally to remove that hesitation of destroying the expensive asset. And because of that, putting other people in danger. And that's the whole point of this subscription offering. It empowers them to both always have the latest technology, but also to risk the technology, which is its intended purpose.
So what we're talking about, police force then, subscription, what are they getting for that? What's the cost we're looking at? So just...
Ian, I think if you want to know that price, you're going to have to sign an NDA first. Okay.
But it really revitalized the sport of pigeon shooting.
Get the ballpark things because here those facts will be out because you'd freedom of information, the force, and they'd have to put it out there anyway. So it's just trying to gather for in Europe whether you could do this.
Well, I wanted to bring a little thing to that. If I'm not muted, no, I'm not. Can you actually get around ITAR? Could you send Ian or Edinburgh Drones? I see her in the comments. Good evening to you, Edinburgh Drones. Could you send a box of these to Europe easily under ITAR?
So our technology actually isn't ITAR restricted. The thermal imager on board is relatively low resolution. It's configurable to only have an 8 hertz frame rate, which removes an ITAR restriction. The mesh networking radios also fall under the, outside of the jurisdiction of ITAR. So, we can. I'll say for what it's worth, we're very focused on the US, just because it's a huge market and this is where the company's based. But in the future, I think we will do more and more work internationally.
And I can ask. Sorry. Go on. Go on then.
I'm intrigued on the mesh radios, and just a couple of things, because obviously you guys are heavily US based, and it is an interesting time with DJI. Are you using? I don't know if you can say, but are you doing it yourselves? Are you using the Doodle Lab solution? Are you it's interesting. You said it's an expensive part of the drone. It's actually the one core technology that DJI has, is how we actually identified these other drones that appeared on the market, because we know certain things that DJI have full control over. From that side of things, are you using your own in-house solution, or have you gone to the likes of Doodle Labs, because they seem to be the biggest I'm seeing in the commercial sector?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of suppliers of these components. So Doodle Labs, Persistent Systems, Trellisware, Silvis, DTC, like there are quite a few. Yes. So our primary partner is DTC. We've had like very extensive conversations with Silvis too. But yeah, DTC is our main partner.
And again, and this is the interesting thing, because one of the big pushes you're seeing right now with DJI is drones for troops. And if you go through Twitter and if you go through X, you look at what you guys are doing, you look at this, there is no drone problem here. Whereas the world is sitting here and saying there's a drone problem, there's a drone cost issue. There isn't a drone issue. The technology exists. You guys are delivering it. Your pricing, actually, what you were saying there, the 15,000, in the reality is small bucks, especially when we're talking the kind of capability of the aircraft. Yet there's this perception that there is no US-based drone industry, which is complete madness when you look at what you guys are doing.
Yeah. I'll say though, for what it's worth, this is a pretty recent development. I think Skydio X10 is a really good drone. I think Responder is a really good drone. Before those two systems hit the market, there really wasn't great product parity. X2 was pretty uncompetitive with like the best in class DJI drones, whereas X10, I think is reasonably competitive. So I do agree with you. I mean, there is absolutely a US drone industry. It's very, very small compared to, what exists right now in China. But that's something that we're, working to help correct, and Skydio is doing the same. And I mean, I welcome more US drone companies to kind of build up this entire industry.
But what people are not separating here is you guys are not a consumer drone business, nor is Skydio now largely. Ignore the S2. The S2 was there, that if we look at Skydio, the S2 was a way of bringing in money. If you actually look at it from the outside, and it got them profile and it got them where they needed to do. And whilst there's a lot of, there isn't a huge commercial drone market actually anywhere. The industrial and commercial market is fairly small. What you've seen is the proliferation of domestic product being used in those environments. As Ian was saying there earlier, what you have is police forces buying $400 Mavic Minis and using that tool to save lives. The real challenge you're going to have is there is absolutely a place for this high-end stuff, as you've got there, as you were saying, but it's how do you put a tool into a police officer's hand, like Ian was saying, that cost is just so small, it's a no-brainer, and that's the challenge.
And then can I just sort of add to that, just to pile it up on you there, Blake? But surely that's a subscription. What I was going to ask is, so with that subscription model, am I actually just buying the data from your pilots or operators, apart from a handful of them with officers, various police, fire, ambulance, but mostly the data is coming from your gang? Is that how that subscription works?
So our customers fully own the hardware. And at the end of like that 2.5 year period, when they get upgraded, they get the new tech, they actually get to keep the old drones. And they can fly them around, continue to use them in real missions, or just use them as training units. All of the above is totally possible. The only thing that happens is the warranty transfers. So we won't continue like replacing those drones if they do get crashed. As far as, how do we get the price point lower? The thing is that DJI has really been able to make some remarkable infrastructure investments over the course of their history. into things like custom silicon for, video encoding and transmission and everything else that we were kind of talking about a little bit earlier, into things like highly automated manufacturing lines where, the drones at the end of the line practically take off autonomously, like navigate through an obstacle course to ensure quality, and then almost like land in their boxes to be delivered to customers, and many other things. And it's really amazing what they've been able to build, but they've received massive external investment from CCP directly. And if there is one company that's state-sponsored that's going after a market like this, and every other company on the freaking planet isn't state-sponsored, that is just an inherent asymmetry. Add that to them being based in China, where the entire global, consumer electronics industry is based, and where all of their suppliers already are, and where there's a huge domestic talent pool, and everything else that set them up for great success. And I just think it's almost impossible for U.S. companies without state backing to really develop comparable products at comparable price points. Our price of labor is higher. Obviously, like the same suppliers don't exist in this country. So you have to work with suppliers that might be able to deliver a comparable product, but at a much higher price. Just everything is different. So it's kind of weird to me to expect US companies to be able to compete directly on like price and feature set with a Chinese company that has all of these advantages. It's not going to happen without some external force.
The last thing I was just going to say is you mentioned a point there without state sponsorship in the US, and I genuinely think the biggest mistake everyone's making is that in the US they're not doing it, and they need to. I think the problem is the big argument in the industry is bad DJI because they're receiving help. I think the mistake isn't that they're getting help. The mistake is that everyone else isn't doing it, and that's the problem for you and the other businesses. Is that I think the West is letting itself down. We can cry and complain about the game all day long, but the game is afoot, and you've got to get in it, if you get my meaning. But yeah, it's that.
Yeah, they're basically chopping off their own tail, and they don't really know what they should be doing with that. I think Ian, you were saying that a lot of the police forces are buying the smaller drones and all the rest of it. And yeah, they are. And basically, what they are, well, I can't speak for the British police, of course, but I know that what they're doing here in Finland is that they're pushing, is that they take a lot of video. So they push video through, and they're using AI for like sort of, sporting events and let's say rallies and whatnot. So, that's easy to do. It's easy to get that video and push that through. Blake, are you having any platform where data can be gathered, not only, let's say doing first responding, but let's say monitoring, crowd monitoring? Do you have the ability to gather data, using, let's say, AI and whatnot? Do you have that ability within your platform, or is that something that has to be added, let's say, API?
Yeah, so we are building some capabilities like that. For example, like automated tracking functions. Like a good use case for 911 response drones. Believe it or not, it's like vehicle pursuits. Those are wildly dangerous for everyone. Again, like dangerous for suspects, dangerous for officers, dangerous for the general public. Why do them at all when you can just follow a car until it parks somewhere and then accomplish the arrest there?
Oh, hang on a minute. You can't follow a car with a drone. It doesn't go enough. It doesn't go fast enough. That's why we have helicopters. You can't do a 100-mile-an-hour chase in your drone, surely.
So this drone's good, like I said, to about 50 miles an hour. However, you don't have to slow down as you turn. You don't have to stop at stoplights. There isn't traffic. All of those are advantages. And then if you have a big citywide network, remember, this drone has zoom. So we can follow a car for a while. Maybe on a freeway, it's getting ahead of us. But then if there's another nest 2 miles up the road, we can deploy that drone, park it over a freeway, wait until the car comes by, and then capture it again. And we do have later aircraft coming out that have even higher top speeds.
How do you missile and use helicopters?
Well, that would be ground-based radar. So we would pick up on the helicopter with like the Echodyne radars, and then we would basically have to route the drones around.
Actually guide you, or just alert you to the fact that there's something there?
They're quite precise, actually. However, that becomes like a dangerous enough operation that I think our customers would like hesitate to deploy the drone, or they would call up the news station or whatever else. They do have those relationships.
Going back to this chase scenario. So I get your solution there. That's fair enough, but it's still a bit of so if it was a scenario, I'd say it was a sunny day path. You're assuming all things are good there. For example, weather is a significant factor, more so with the drone than with the helicopter. So what are you going to do on a really, really bad stormy day, the rain's pouring it down and so on? How proven is your drone to be able to do it? Because we've seen it even with DJI, with your IP stuff. Your IP testing in the lab thing, it's usually about 3 minutes and spraying it from various angles and that. It's not like everything's individually tested for thousands of hours and proven. So how do you know that you'd be able to operate, and really could you operate in all weathers? Because we see, all our commercial sector, we don't run 365, every day. People will take the brakes off. They won't fly on particular days. So how do you deal with that, and what have you proven so far?
Well, I'll tell you, being based in Seattle actually helps. We just get no lack of rain at all. But listen, I mean, it's a really big engineering problem, right? I mean, that's the reality of the thing. Like you start off, you make what you think are reasonable assumptions, and you build a prototype, and then you test it, and inevitably you'll learn that some of the assumptions that you made were wrong, or you came up with a number of bad engineering solutions to a problem, and then you have to go back and correct those issues. And it's just an iterative process. The drones will get better over time, but we do take this really seriously. Our customers need to deploy these drones, in a pretty wide array of weather conditions, and we spend the time to ensure that the tech is reliable.
I guess.
What about public acceptance?
Can I just give you one question first?
All right.
So thinking forward, because I still think the weather is always going to be a challenge. I mean, have you thought further on of maybe you do another product that maybe it isn't electric, maybe it's gas power, maybe it's more of a cross between a drone and a helicopter? Have you considered down that path?
Camera on a pole.
Yes. We've thought a little bit about gas powered drones. I think the better solution for us is probably just larger aircraft, with larger diameter props that we can get some more efficiency out of, and everything else. So I think that'll probably be more the direction we go.
And to give the FAA more to worry about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that becomes pretty complicated. Like, think about what a drone nest would have to look like that could refuel one of these aircraft with like gasoline. You could absolutely do it. It's just much more complicated and impractical.
It's larger.
But that nest is called we call them in old-fashioned aviation a hangar.
Let's not forget Amazon's drone is 80 pounds, and it's the size of a dining room table.
That has to be the worst design for anything out there. It really does.
The FAA says it's fine. Flood over your schools and your houses and your roads. There's no problem. Money solves those problems.
Just one question from me, Blake, is how about social acceptance with all of your drones that you've been working with? Have you had much feedback in terms of social acceptance, not just from, let's say, your customers, but actually from the actual public?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think. So there's sort of two questions there. Social acceptance for our indoor tactical drone, and then social acceptance for these like larger citywide 911 response drone networks. And it is a little different. So I think social acceptance around the indoor tactical drone has been really, really strong. Like, the alternative to sending in our drone into one of these SWAT situations is a dozen people holding fully automatic weapons.
Boston Dynamics.
That's I do think Boston Dynamics will ultimately sell to a lot of SWAT teams because the tracked robots are just so bad. and get caught on stuff constantly and can't navigate staircases and everything else. And it is nice to have a platform that can open doors with an ARM. So I think Boston Dynamics will be successful in this market. But there will still be a place for a lemur style platform because we can enter attics, right? We can fly up to a second or third story window, break it out, fly inside. Our drones are faster to navigate these environments. So for like an early quick look of what's going on, it's just a good solution, like many other things. So anyway, I think it's really clear that Lemur 2 is a social good, like when utilized in the context of a SWAT operation. This definitely does become a more nuanced and complicated question when we start talking about 911 response drone deployments, because it is just a much more powerful technology. And I think it has truly incredible capability to keep people safe, like directly save lives, improve response times, everything else. But controls on it matter. Like, for example, me personally, I'm not particularly excited about these things being used for patrol applications, just sending up an emergency response drone to like survey a community. However, I'm incredibly excited about these things being used to respond to people asking for help, calling 911, saying that I need support in this moment, and then being able to deliver an emergency medical payload or provide information to first responders that help coordinate a response or whatever else. So, I think that is really like the crux of this. And there is responsibility on the side of the technology manufacturer in order to make these systems configurable and to build things like public transparency portals so anyone in a community can log on and see how a system like this is being used. The types of emergencies that it's responding to, specific GPS paths, launch times, landing times, the purpose of each flight. Like, I think this is really important information to be extremely transparent about. But frankly, I think it's also up to police chiefs and fire chiefs and mayors, city councils, elected officials to decide how they want to deploy this technology in their communities. And also give communities the opportunity to voice their input and, help inform the policies that dictate how technology like this is used. And I think if all of that happens, this can be a really great outcome for everyone. But it is going to be, important to be thoughtful about these things.
Wow. Cool. Yeah. I thought you mentioned the transparency piece there, and you mentioned again in your press gambit the other day. Now this is going to sound very rude, but the others know that's what I'm like. It's all very well if you've got the keys to all this information, and that's your intent as a company moving forward, that it goes like that. But will every chief of police look at it that way? Will they all think, oh yeah, that's really what we should do? Can you insist? Because it's a great idea. It's the right idea. But is it really going to work in the real world?
Well, so it's pretty rare that a police chief can like unilaterally make that decision, because these things do have to be approved by city councils. They just do. They're expensive enough that they hit a threshold that city council approval is required. And those are elected officials. So I think that elected officials should be the ones to make this decision on a community by community basis. Like, I personally am uncomfortable making these decisions for everyone in America, for example. I just don't think that's my place. But I do think it's my place to make these things configurable and to ensure that the intent of the communities wherever this stuff is deployed is actionable.
And I had to change my background because indoor robots all suffer the design problems of Daleks. So you're probably too young to know Doctor Who, Blake. But really, if you can, I've watched Doctor Who. Yeah, if you can sort out the Dalek problem, then you're there. And I don't subscribe to this suddenly being able to make them fly nonsense. But anyway, so I just thought, indoor
William
robotics.
Hartnell in your background? Exactly.
There's Daleks and then there's rubbish new Daleks. Yeah, the new ones. They solve everything, don't they? By television. Yeah, it's rubbish. That's
can't
rubbish.
beat cardboard sets.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
exactly.
Guys, I apologize. I'm going to have to run to a 3 p.m. But thank you so much for having me here. This is a lot of fun. Good questions across the board, and I just really appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you very much, Ron.
No
Yeah,
worries.
good luck to you. Good luck with it. We'd love to have you again.
Cool.
Take care, Blake.
Yeah, I'd love that too. See you guys.
Cheers, mate. Cheers, bye-bye. Oh, he's gone. Right, what should we
We
say?
talk about him now.
Exactly. Which I don't. I wish we drilled down. I tried. Well, you know me. I can't do it. Drill down a little bit more into it's the operational side of it. If they get that bit right, because I'm afraid, you know, a quadcopter is 4 motors or 2 sticks and 4 motors, and you hang different sensors off it. The work is going to be in that intelligence picture that they gather as they fly around, and they seem to be getting on top of that. So it'll be very interesting.
The floor mapping as it went along was a nice. He mentioned that's a nice feature because you know if you're thinking if you're a police officer and you're flying that in and you've already got a floor map built as you go in, because in a situation it could be quite, you know, when you're under that pressure like that, thinking, oh, where the B, where's the way back out, and for, you know, well, for somebody to follow it in on foot, it's quite a nice feature.
It's like that movie Prometheus, you know, where the thing goes through and it just does the LiDAR and produces the whole map, and it's all 3D and you can rotate it around. That'd be cool.
I think one of the problems facing this, in the UK it's 999, or is it still 999, and in the US it's 911. Here it's 112. But you know, it's still very much
costs us 111.
it's not it's not location based, because I think that it's still very much that if you call 999 or whatever it is, and they're still not able to locate you because you're basically calling a kind of a landline still. I think that's still pretty much the case. Pretty much most of so if you do have this kind of first response, you know, how are they able to find you? How will that drone find where you are? You know,
the big problem is
the blood track.
The big problem we face is, and it's the complete different mentality. You know, if we look at the very basics, the biggest air ambulance we have in the UK is a charity, because it's not paid for by the government. It's not paid for by anything. They spend more money on toilet paper in government buildings in America than we do in policing and thing in the UK. The problem is we don't even play at it. Playing at it wouldn't even be the right term. The police is ridiculously underfunded. In the US, I got friends who work in government and in sort of local authority, and the money they play with on an annual basis, it's not even funny. Do you know what I mean? The level of investment they put into policing, into all of the bits that make a difference. Whereas, you know, where I live, I'm quite remote down South Wales. There's been a lot of hoo-ha. Our local hospital has basically turned into a nursing home. I live opposite the landing site for the air ambulance. In the first 20 years of me living here, I think I saw it 3 times. It's now 4 or 5 times a month, because the ambulances are 20 hours backed up. The problem we have is the police want the tools, but they can't afford them. They'll use them for the wrong things. Let's be honest. They spend most of their time chasing kids on mopeds around council estates, or
they're legally not allowed to do that anymore.
Apparently.
Auditors, they chase the auditors.
You know, our problems are more social, I think, than the American issues. We have far more social issues in the UK that the police are spending all of their time being, half the time, bloody
that's because other services have been underfunded, though, isn't it? It's not actually their job per se.
Things will get better when you have national service back.
Encryption is the secret.
And I actually think the drone business in Europe entirely, including the UK, is all about the private sector. It's not about what you can do for government and local.
There's, and of course, I don't know how this is in the UK, but of course, in Europe, we have a lot of Horizon 2020 projects. There's a lot of funding a lot
Well,
of
that's
fun.
4 years ago.
Yeah, but it's still going on, and you know,
Yeah.
it's still, there's a lot of money, can I say, being pissed away on projects that are never going to happen. This is a subject for another show. I think that that there is a lot of money available there. There's a lot of money available. It's going in the wrong places. There are people making decisions for drones because they think they know that, you know, I know, I see it. I've been involved in it, and I see the money. I know what's been spent, and I see people spending that on things that they shouldn't be spending on, and they, you know, they don't talk to companies like us who have a better reality of what that money should be spent on how it should be spent more realistically, because it's being pissed away. You know, it really pisses me off. I have to say, it really pisses me off because it's literally being pissed away. You know,
come to Africa and see some of the delivery drone trials.
You mean when the lights are on?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Massively. I'm sure every country in the world has its examples of things where money's just disappearing when committees of experts stand up that have never even flown a DJI anything and decide decisions. Oh, we'll do it like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like regulators, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like in the US, you look at it, the drone is the next battering ram, they look at it as, you know, their problems are just so different, and it is interesting when you look at because there's all this talk of the US doesn't have a drone industry. It absolutely has a very vibrant drone industry. Actually, when you look at it, the argument is that they're not spending it where they should be spending it, and maybe the tariff situation, if that happens, will change that. Maybe the ban, if that happens, will change that. We
haven't spoken about that tariff thing. I can't remember the precise details, but that's pretty nuts, isn't it? Within how many years will the price double? Is it 3?
I can't remember, but it's very American. So they do. The US does like to do tariffs on foreign imports. It is very much up their street. They've done it for years in other product areas, and it's actually been very successful. So that is a very real possibility, and it was substantial jumps. It was like 50% increase. But even the crazy thing is, even with all of that, they'd still be cheaper than Skydio and the alternative. So the tariff solution isn't going to fix everything. It's how do you make, the reality is, how do you make American business and American government buy American product? That's the argument here. The product is out there.
You give them no option.
That's what you're going to do. Yeah.
But tariffs do improve security. The more tariffs you pay, the more secure the product.
The more, yeah, definitely.
We know
that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Kevin will back us up on this if he's still in the comments.
Make DJI great again. It's as simple as that. That's what we should be.
Right. Hang on. What was it earlier? We got to start selling. I've forgotten what was the other thing. It was the anti-drone toilet paper, and now we've got hats that make DJI great again. Great.
I think they'll be bad. I genuinely think it's going to happen. I think it's coming, and it's their own fault.
Yes, I agree with you. It's their own fault very heartily. They could have addressed this a lot earlier. When our friend who
5 years ago,
when he was in charge, they should have caught hold of it then.
If DJI can't rally their troops and lobby their politicians, nobody can. But I think we've already seen that the community is so disparate. We don't have the numbers, we don't have the strength, don't have the unity, don't have the desire. It's always someone else's problem.
Well, I wonder if DJI doesn't have enough users to make that happen.
No, they've got enough users, but I don't think they'll have enough that'll do anything. Oh, Gary's lights have gone out. What's
the Drone Alliance again? What's that one where Vic Moss is
the thing paid for by DJI?
DJI, yeah.
No. That's not that one. It's the other one with Vic Moss.
Paid for.
But the FAA. Drone
no. So yeah.
I know.
So many acronyms.
I know.
Yeah.
Sit on their thumbs and do nothing.
Yeah. So I mean, who's putting pressure on them enough to put pressure onto the FAA for the FAA to put pressure on to, let's say, the Senate or whoever it is because they need to be doing these associations need to be doing more, and I don't see or hear them doing anything. I don't know if they are, but they seem to be pretty silent from let's say where I'm sitting. Here,
I think
I hear more from you, Gary, and also from others, but I don't hear much from Rick Moss.
I think it's at a level they're not even talking with, and this is why you're not hearing from them.
The
I
FAA
think for years this sat at that level where there was lots of noise and everyone sat around the table buying each other pasties and sausage rolls and patting each other on the back and saying how great we are.
I want in.
And we've got an NFC around this airport, and we've done this. When the big game, and then the parents came in and went, "We don't want you playing with those toys anymore," and that's where it is today, and I don't think it's good. I think it's very bad for users. I think we've got to wait and see. I'm not quite sure it'll be the full ban. I think there'll be restrictions put in place that will make it difficult in certain situations. Whether
do you think so I mean, how I see this, Ian, and just what you were saying there, and what I think is going to happen is that I think in certain states they will be banned, like so Florida and others. But I think that in other states that might not be the case. So
it's an FCC ban that'll be federal.
The FCC is the complicated
one.
Yeah. Okay, so STC then it's going to be
That's endgame because their licenses are revoked for their RF.
Yeah,
the very first time I cut my finger building my very first chuck glider and launched it with blood on it, I knew this wouldn't end well.
So it is your fault.
Excellent. I think this isn't about. I don't think there's anything anyone could have done that would have changed today. Today is political. The political problem is not the user problem. This isn't now about guys flying drones down piers. This isn't about that. This is about China.
I don't know that I agree. Yeah, I don't know that I get, because if the whole community had stood up when this whole registration crap came out, when they revoked Section 336, like the NRA stands up to the government over gun bans and things, the government dare not touch guns because the NRA is such a strong body that if the drone community had stood its ground and said, no, we're not doing it, get stuffed, we might not be where we are today.
I'm not sure. I think this is bigger than that. I think this isn't the stuff, I think you've got to look at the two layers. I think that, remote ID and all of that stuff is, because remote ID is low level. That's your police. That's your local.
Registration was the beginning of the end. They should never have been revoking Section 336. They should have not criminalized the hobby or commercialized the hobby in the way that it's happened. I was watching some videos on YouTube. I put some up on X of the old days where, there were great turnouts of the public to model flying events. And it was like, it was family and it was in the schools and it was sponsored by auto companies. Model flying was big and great. And now it's been lumped in with drones. And because nobody can get off their fat bums because they just want to fly in circles on a Sunday, the commercial interests have just marginalized everything into a corner. Now the commercial interests are saying, right, we don't even want imports of DJI drones. We want to just make money, make money ourselves. So we're heading down a toilet hole here. And there's no one cares enough.
Yeah, but I think the difference with the model aircraft is the model aircraft always had their locations. They always had where they flew. And the model aircraft community were very tight. And if let's say no one dared go out of that boundary and go against the rules. Whereas the drones are a bit different. You have your planks of wood who don't give a damn, and so that's why the model aircraft community, even though you're saying that of course they are together in a sense, but here, for example, where I am, they are separate because you have the model aircraft community. They do their thing in their locations, and they don't want to be associated. Yes, EASA put them in the same kind of, but they are still separate,
But the thing is, that's happened elsewhere in the world. Model aircraft people have said it doesn't affect us; it's drones. They haven't looked at it and they realise that everyone says no. Your model aircraft is now a drone. Yeah, and you won't get off your fat bum and say we're not having it. So you're lumped in there, and now you've got to register, and you've got remote ID, and all these things that should never apply to the hobby are applying to the hobby because basically people flying model aircraft are selfish and they just want to fly on a Sunday afternoon in a circle until something affects them. They're not prepared to stand up and do anything. Yes, and it's too late once it affects them.
Bigger picture thinking. Yeah, no, it is. Now let's because we're well over the hour, but we do need to keep going.
I was going to say before you move on for a second, obviously I didn't get time to address it with it, but one concern I'd have with these drones, which isn't just these blink drones it's just a general issue for anyone that was going to be going down that route of policing with a drone. Because I remember there was a British camera crew, and they went over to the US, and they were in a police helicopter there filming, and they kept hearing these chink, 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 chink. They said, "Don't worry, it's just people shooting at the helicopter." So I presume they must have had some armor underneath or whatever. But for them, it was quite normal, which I thought was a bit bizarre. But anyway, it just got me thinking, and obviously we've seen it with the ULEZ in the UK, even on the cameras where people are smashing them up. If you actually had drones doing enforcement and traffic enforcement and all this, they would be seen as just by the fact of those tasks would, they would seen as a kind of an enemy by the community. How are they going to stop, especially in America, these things being shot down? Is what is
ready to go.
You must,
use helicopter armor.
Yeah,
but you can't shine a laser
put
pointer
them
at a
inside
helicopter.
the
You just shoot at it.
I guess the only way, really, you just have to fly them up a lot higher, wouldn't you? And then rely on the.
It's okay. They have a visual observer they're watching. It's okay.
Yeah, and they can fight back.
I think they just have lots more ready to go. But what I wanted to ask
Louis saying he's going to be disappointed there's no mention of Gatwick. Oh, we can fix that.
Actually, I don't know how his business models are going to stack up, though. If they replace those drones, no question asked. Like, you imagine the boys, all the police boys out on a Sunday having a barbecue. Let's do some clay pigeon shooting. Get the drone up. Yeah, don't worry, we'll get a free one. They replace it every time. Sort of care refresh gone mad, isn't it?
It is. Now, t'other Ian first, before we go to Gatwick, and give Louis fair warning, because Gatwick has got interesting, but we'll give Louis fair warning. So what's happening with these speed controllers then? What's going on, Ian? It seems quite serious. And why have they been told to stop, really?
We don't know. And it is, what is weird about this is there's no notice. This is not even a hint. So just so people understand, BL Heli was the open source flight control software. It wasn't the earliest, it was the second. Simon K was around first, but BL Heli was around in about 2013. The open source version lasted till about 2015, and then 2016 it went closed source, and it has been incredibly successful since then. It runs on 32-bit microcontrollers. It was the go-to. It was the only viable option there's been for sort of 7-8 years. There has been a move from the community, especially with the success of Express LRS and other open source projects and Betaflight, to start bringing in an open source one, which is now, as of today, gaining a lot more traction. But the reality was BL Heli was a good product. Manufacturers liked it. Users mostly liked it. Everyone was happy. However, Friday, out the blue, they send an email to every manufacturer they deal with that they are ceasing trading as of now. They've locked the doors. They will be providing no more licensing. They are no more. Now, the reason that was given in this was geopolitical issues around the globe. They are based in Holland. It's complicated. No one knows. They haven't communicated with the community at all.
Did you watch Pavel's video?
I did, but I'm not. Look, you can't. Blaming Putin is simplistic. Has Putin opened the doors to something? Yes, but it isn't that simple. And what we don't know is, has this person had a knock on the door? Has this person's conscience suddenly sat here and gone? Because reality is, their software will be used in a very big percentage of the hobby product style being used at war. And has they just gone, I don't want part of this anymore? They have labeled legislative issues. And I do get the feeling the men in black may have knocked on the door. And we don't know. We just don't know. But here and now, it's gone. Now, as of today, their servers are down, which is a problem because there are some earlier versions of the firmware that have some what we deem as critical bugs, i.e. the motors are capable of spinning up on battery power up, which should never happen. It's an ESC, but there is a bug in the firmware, and only the latest firmware fixes that. as of now, no user has access to that latest firmware. So we are now at a point of the product still works. It works the way it did yesterday. You can still configure it. You can still change it. What you can't do is update the firmware. The firmware was kept behind closed doors. I'm not going to say product is bricked. That's not the right term, but you're left in the position you're in as of now. And that's the reality. And it is a very big, it is the biggest thing we've seen as a result of the war in drones, period. It's very, because these aren't just used in drones.
You've got a copy of that on your cache somewhere in your computer. That
I'm checking
it. Your ESC.
I'm trying to find it. Well, it's on the ESC, but but so there's a lot going on at the moment. Now, the benefactor out of this will be AM32 and the open source projects. They were bubbling along nicely, but they weren't at that level. Whereas now, hopefully they will. My biggest concern, and I was quite vocal about this in the video, and I've been talking to the devs in the background, is today we need all of these manufacturers to get on board with the dev team. The risk is manufacturers just go, hey, free open source software. And China, we know what they're like. They'll go, oh, we'll just start putting it on without supporting the project. Right. They need to put their money where their mouth is and give that money they were using in licensing now to the devs, because the devs have suddenly gone from this pet project into what is probably the only realistic 32-bit ESC software out there today. So manufacturers, my concern is we saw that with Express LRS. In the early days, a lot of manufacturers went, oh, it's open source and free. We'll just install it and sell it. And then there were loads of problems. You know, the best open source projects are projects that are backed by hardware manufacturers supporting it. As Ardra Pilot has proved, as Express LRS has proved, it might be open source, but you need the manufacturers to get on board with the project as well.
And that explains why my drone wouldn't fly this morning. Eh?
It will, but it's an out the bluer. No one saw it coming. I've been careful not to be too critical of them. I am critical today of the fact that the servers are down because they've left everyone in the crap. What we don't know is the why. And I think we have to be open-minded on that until we understand, because it may not be as simple as any of us think of he should have just open sourced it. He should have just kept it going. It is a weird world. And I believe it is complex based on his country as well. I don't think it's quite as simple as you can. They're not part of the EU, are they? But
where's he from?
I believe, is it Holland?
Well, Holland's in the EU.
So it wasn't Men in Black, it was Men in Clogs.
No, it's not Holland.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think where he was. This might not be Holland. Who's the country that wants to join the EU?
Everyone.
Ukraine.
No, not Ukraine.
I don't know. Estonia. Who knows?
No, it was the ones up that way. It was one of the ones that wasn't part of it, but said they were going to join when Russia kicked off.
Oh yeah, one of those. Everyone back. I've still got those Hobby King 15 amp blue ESCs on my blackout mini quad. I can use those. It is
a potentially interesting subject, because is this the beginnings of government? Norway. Is this the beginnings of government starting to put pressure on stuff they don't like that they can put pressure on? So what the war has shown everyone, and this is where our problem is, that a sub $500 product can carry about half a kilo, fly about 5 kilometers. That is undetectable, completely undetectable, regardless of what all these snake oil bullshit companies will tell you, right? They cannot see these things coming. And they've all gone, Jesus, we've let the public build these? And I think there's going to be a clampdown.
Yeah, it's not like America where no one has a gun.
No.
But it's true. The whole hobby is under attack from so many directions. There's going to be some quite monumental changes in the next couple of years, I believe. And unfortunately, we are going to be so much on the back foot that we should go out and fly while we can with the freedoms that we currently have, because we may not have them much longer, thanks to the pressures of war and Amazon and goodness knows who else.
I think the war has changed things. And that's why I was saying to you earlier, Bruce, this, we were all last year arguing over remote ID and, what I'm now going to deem the low level stuff, right? You're not allowed to fly in that park. Now it's at the stage of not about that park. It's now about, we don't even want you to have that equipment. it's moved up a tier, and it'll be interesting to see because there are some pretty big closed source drone parts manufacturers in Europe. You've got FedTech, you've got others in Germany. They're the ones to sort of watch, because if there is going to be a move to sort of close some of this down, they're the companies they're going to go after, these sort of closed source businesses in Europe that they can put pressure on. And we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yes, it's time to pivot, everyone. Get your beauty vlogs going because the hobby's dead.
that ain't pivoting for you. That's your life. That you're
yeah. Oh, you've noticed, Gary.
That's how you make your money.
Beard Island head lotion. But it's a weird time.
The third product of the show.
Beard Island head lotion. But yeah, it was. And the worst thing is, no one saw this coming. There wasn't even a hint of this. This was. That I believe all of the manufacturers got these emails and thought this is a scam, and they couldn't.
Great acting. I get the reference now. Great acting. Thank you very much. Great acting. I sit down, dear. There's another story. Let's quickly go on to Gatwick before I shuffle off to bed, because Louis will be very, very disappointed if we don't mention Gatwick. Now let's hope I get this. No, that was the first one, Joe. This one first. No, this one. Oh, I'm so professional. So you've sent this recently, Ian, and what were your thoughts on this one?
Well, this was going back to, I mentioned that the ICO have amongst their targets at the moment the Ministry of Defence, and I noticed that I was getting replies to a few of my freedom of information. So I thought, what better time than now to ask those nagging questions? And this is one of them replied to, which is nice, and it's nice and complete. And it gives us information that the DFT thought the drone community just didn't need to know. It would be against national security for us to know, which is not only the dates here, funnily enough, we wouldn't have got them at all, but in this you will see there is the acronym DWARF. And this was a year ago or so. We were looking at a spreadsheet from the DFT which they failed to redact. and the word dwarf was in there, and I figured it was the likely some sort of code name for the team that was there. But actually, no, this is their official name. So the part of 8 Force Protection Wing that have the counter UAS, they are the Defence Warning and Reporting Flight. So that's their technical name. So they actually do have their own single web page. But if you try to like look up stuff on them, they're fairly recent. So there's people even in the RAF that hadn't heard. Well, I know a lot hadn't heard this terminology because I'd asked around and said, "Do anyone know what it means?" And no one did at the time. So there we go. But the interesting bit here is just how quickly the RAF had decided there wasn't a drone there and had left. So this
was probably open.
Yeah. Well, this shows the smarts of the RAF because it's got to the 24th of December and they're like, we're not staying around here anymore for this drone that isn't there. We're buggering off home and we're going to have our Christmas meals. The rest of you,
might have gone to a midget throwing contest.
Hang around here, pretend
It seems so, doesn't it? Yes, absolutely. Or maybe they had to because they're dwarfs and they were booked for Christmas or something like that. Let me get that other one up because whilst we've been on the you can say what's happened whilst we've been on the air. Let's put that one up.
Well, this is about. I've probably slightly made myself.
Oh, maybe we shouldn't then, won't we?
No. This one can go on, but I'm going to say with this one, I've probably made myself appear on the radar now because I directed a freedom of information, which isn't this one but another, directly to the director. A director of the DFT that's responsible for sort of national security issues because everything was going to her department anyway, so it just seemed daft to kind of play this game that the stuff isn't going up the chain somewhere and having responsible. The interesting bit here is if you hold over the 4th of June, is it that one or is it? Yeah. Hold your mouse over that.
Yeah.
Is it? No, it's not showing the time for you. It does for me.
Oh, it is here, but it's not on the.
It's on the video. Well,
yeah.
basically, while we've been on this show, the DFT done reply. So someone is literally working overtime and considers my freedom of information's significant enough to replying back to them. So, and this is what's happening now is they're all, because I've won at the first tier tribunal with Sussex Police using the public interest exception, they're now using national security, and they're trying to use an exemption that's is one where you can't test it with the public interest. So that's what they're trying to do on both, which is, it seems now they're going for it as a default of we'll try and find anyway. Now, you're only technically allowed to do that if you can say the information you're handling has come from, like GCHQ. It's, really, we're playing like this serious thing of it's really high up within within the security services that we can't even let you see this. And I don't really buy it. I think someone's playing games here to even try and say this, because the trouble with the DFT, when you look at it, when everything's being blocked from national security, like we've seen that term dwarf, that was blocked under national security, and yet that team has got a website with their name on it. The MOD doesn't have any concern with the drone community knowing that took place, and that's when they left. So it seems the only organisation, well, two, you've got Scottish Police, obviously, and they've got their reason. Naturally, they're going to not want to discuss it if they made a mistake. But the DFT is really one of those that's doubled down protecting it. So really, it comes across that they really are trying to protect their own backside potentially. That they've known that there likely wasn't an issue here, decided to weaponize it in the consultations that we've had in that, and now just want to, really dig down and say, no, you ain't going to have any information on this. We're going to delete what we can. We're going to block what we can. That's the way it's looking. And until we start seeing some transparency, that's the only perception to get from it. Because time and time again, stuff they've said in national security, the other organisations, Home Office, MOD, and that don't see it as national security. It's only the DFT that keeps jumping for that time and time again. And it's all it really is we don't want you getting the information. We don't want you seeing what we knew.
Ian, you know that Tom Cruise is currently in the UK right now. I think you need to get him to go into GCHQ and do that thing where he's kind of balancing down to get those secrets out there.
I was going to say, GCHQ won't even have it. They won't even care. It's just someone to go in the DFT and get that person the delete key on the emails and just slap the finger off it.
Or you could join the Church of Scientology.
They're being such a boring filing cabinet as well.
I've got to go, guys. I will take it.
Mate. So have I. All right. Thanks, Ian. Thanks very much.
Cheers, me too. I'm flying in the morning. Good night, guys.
And so, on that note, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, look after yourselves. We'll see you again. 2100 G and T. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye for now. Oh, I'm going to hit that.